One of the poses I find most comforting for my low back and my hips is called malasana or a squat. And in other countries, squatting is very typical, but not so much in our culture. We do a lot of sitting in chairs. In this practice, we'll work a little bit more on how to go a little bit deeper in our squats and open our hips. One of the things that I like using is a little elevation on my heels when I feel like I just can't go down far enough. So, a rolled sticky mat, a rolled towel, a rolled blanket will all work fine. Let's get right to it. Let's start lying on our back and get the idea of what squatting is about before doing a lot of weight bearing on our feet. So lie on your back. And when you lie on your back, just pause for a moment with your knees bent. As you lie down, just catch hold of a nice ease in the breath. So as we start lying down, bend your right knee and draw it in toward your chest. Take your right foot up toward the sky. Keep the knee bent and hold on to the shin. Some of you can hold on to your foot, your heel. To take the right thigh a little bit more parallel to the mat, just kind of pause there. It's a nice, easy way to work yourself into your practice very slowly. Release your foot down and do the same with the opposite. So pull the thigh in just with the fingers interlaced at the shin. Take your foot up and use your hands to help draw the thigh a little bit more parallel to the mat. And if you can hold on to your outer edge of the foot to encourage a little bit more deep stretch there. And release your foot down. Now let's do 2 feet up. So take 2 feet up, bend your knees a lot, and just as you did before, hold on to your shins, hold on to the outer edge of your feet, draw your thighs a little bit more parallel to the mat. And here you have it. You're in a supine squat position. So your hips kind of get the idea of where we're going to in this sequence of poses. And now that your feet are not weight bearing, your legs are not weight bearing, there you don't feel any crankiness in the knees like you would if you were right side up. So just pause there. And allow yourself to go a little bit deeper in the pose by drawing your knees a little bit closer to the mat while still hugging the inner thighs in toward your ribs. And as you're ready, release your feet down. Let's come up to a standing position. So make your way to stand at the front of the mat. And as you come to standing, park your feet very firmly down. With your feet parallel to one another, inhale, take your arms up. Keep your arms up and take your right leg back, not too deeply. Just bend your right knee. And it feels awkward, and you might feel slightly out of balance. Bend your left knee. You can take your hands to your hip. The right leg straight is kind of what we're used to, but in this practice, we'll bend the knee so that we can get a nice stretch to the back of the ankle area, the Achilles tendon, and the calf muscle area. Inhale, take your arms up again and widen your hands, spread your fingers, keep the back knee bent. See if you can get a little bit more bend to the front leg. And release your hands, step your back foot forward and pause for a moment. So you probably felt a little stretch to the back of the ankle and the back of the calf. Now step your left foot back. And again, it doesn't have to be too far back. And if you feel a little wobbly in this, make sure that you take your feet slightly wider so you feel a nice steadiness. As you bend your back knee, now bend your front knee. Take your arms up and have the hands nice and wide apart. Open your chest really nicely as you keep your back knee bent. Get this nice open feeling here. And slowly release your hands and step your back foot forward. With your knees bent, draw your tops of the thighs back and take your arms up. Just got this nice fullness in the pose here. Utkatasana, this nice chair pose. Draw from your navel back toward your spine. Take your hands even wider apart in this variation so you get this nice fullness. And root down to rise up. Release your hands. And if you've got that rolled towel or rolled blanket, rolled sticky mat close by, grab it and take the sticky mat just to the top of the mat. Place your feet so that the heels are on the floor and the base of the toes are on the rolled blanket, towel, or whatever you have. So bend your knees again, and you'll get a nice stretch to the back of the calf muscle. Inhale, take your arms up. Keep a nice fullness there. See if you can take your pelvis down. And I realize this kind of takes you out of balance as you do this, but see if you can get another really nice stretch there to the backs of the legs. Inhale and come up. Exhale, do that again. Bend the knees slightly. And again, it feels slightly awkward, but we're getting a little stretch to the backs of the legs. Inhale, rise up a third time as you press down through the base of the big toe. Just draw your pelvis down and release your hands all the way toward the earth with the knees slightly bent. With the knees slightly bent, just inhale and lengthen your spine, and exhale, soften down. Two more. Inhale, just expand away from the earth. Exhale, be drawn toward the earth. One more time. Inhale, you lengthen out. Exhale, and you soften. With your feet pressing into the rolled mat, place your hands to your low back and lift yourself up. Let's come to step the heels now right on the mat. As you take your heels to the mat and take your feet slightly wider apart, do that same action we just did. Take your arms up. Bend your knees. Just draw your pelvis down. So we're somewhere between that chair pose. We might be going a little bit deeper. See if you can take your pelvis down even more and root down to lift yourself up. Exhale, release your hands. Step yourself off the mat. Come for a moment here into a downward facing dog. So as you pause in downward facing dog, allow your knees to bend, your sit bones to lift up. As you lift your shoulder blades, just soften your heart down toward the earth more. And working on the back sides of the legs still. Reach your right heel toward the earth, but keep your left knee bent. Lift your heel up and take your left heel down. So the left leg comes toward a straight leg position as the right knee is bent. Lift your heel up. Both heels are lifted tall. Bend both knees. Draw yourself into this kind of puppy dog position here with your knees lifted, if possible. So you open the pelvis here, get strength in the legs, and take yourself all the way down. Take the knees down to the mat to come to all fours position. In all fours position with the toes tucked under, bring more weight back to your pelvis. Now, some of us, our knees get really fussy in this, so try to avoid any knee pain. Keep your hands very firmly planted so that you're not drawing too much weight to that area. Some of you can take your hands a little bit closer to your knees, thereby taking a little bit more weight toward your heels. It's up to you. Maybe you can even walk your hands in so that most of the weight is actually on your feet. And sometimes this doesn't feel so good because it's kind of like a lot of work on the toes, really working the toes a lot as you draw your weight to your heels. Inhale, take your arms up, interlace your fingers, and move to one side and the other side, just as a way to just kind of continue this work on the feet to really open them up nicely, one side and back to the other side, and release your hands and come to all fours position. Sometimes the toes really hurt when we do that, so you may want to give them a nice love tap there, just tapping them nicely before coming to downward facing dog. And as you come to downward facing dog, just pause here, bend your knees, lift your sit bones, enjoy your breath. And with the knees bent, with the sit bones lifted, you get this really nice lumbar curve. Walk your hands back toward your feet. Come to Utkatasana, that same pose we were in. Lift your arms up with this nice strong engagement to your feet, your hands nice and wide apart. See if you can drop yourself down a little bit more. Look right between your hands. Draw from the navel back toward the spine. And root down to lift yourself up out of the pose. Exhale, release your hands. Let's come to a wide stance. And as you come to a wide stance, allow your knees to bend. Take the tops of the thighs back. It's like you're going down into the squat. Just take your hands to the tops of the knees. With your hands to the tops of the knees, stack both hands on the right knee and allow your left inner thigh to draw back. Come back to the center. See if you can drop your pelvis a little bit lower. Now stack both hands on the left knee as you straighten your right. And once again, just draw yourself down. And come back to center position with both hands placed on their respective knees. Reach your right arm forward. Reach your left arm forward. See if you can go down a little bit closer to the earth. Keep pulling your feet in toward each other and root down to rise up out of the pose and release your hands. Find your rolled sticky mat again. So now we've worked on the backs of the ankles, the Achilles tendon area, the calf muscle a little bit. Certainly our feet we've worked on, and we've opened the hips nicely. So, with your roll blanket or elevation for your heels, I like to start nice and wide. And this one, you can't turn your toes out. It's something that we don't do very often in yoga. You can turn your toes out just slightly as a way to allow your pelvis to come down. Sometimes just taking your hands forward and drawing yourself into the pose, similar to what we were doing in that wide leg stance. You can just draw yourself down, maybe even go all the way down. Once you're in your full pose, just take your hands right into a prayer position. Now, for some of us, this might be your perfect pose. You want to really honor your knees and your pelvis in this area, but just draw your pelvis slowly down and hold the pose wherever that is for you as you pause and see if you can get your spine nice and elongated in the pose. You just pause here and release your hands. And let's come up to a standing pose. So you can reduce the height of your heels very slowly. Back in the day when there were phone books, I had a teacher in New York who said the best way to learn how to do squats was just to take the New York City phone book, and maybe every 5 pages, you just reduce the height of that phone book. You have your heels on the phone book, and slowly your heels come down. But see if you can reduce the height, whatever you're working with, and and try that. Try coming down in the same way with just a little bit less height. So as you bend your knees, and once again, to balance yourself out, sometimes taking your hands forward to slowly come down to where it feels right for you with the heels pressing down. We start with this elevation because many of us, it's a little hard to get the heels down, but you want your heels pressing into something. And if the heels are lifted, it's a much different feeling in the pose. So you just draw yourself down. And this is a wonderful way to prepare the hips, to prepare the ankles and the Achilles tendon for more advanced poses. Thank you so much for this exploration of the squat position, going toward a full malasana pose. You can continue on with your practice if you like. Take shavasana. Thanks so much for the exploration. Namaste.